You're listening to a Cult Talk Network podcast.
File access granted.
Hidden in the primal wilds of ancient forests. Savage giants, relics of our past. Superior in our own dwellings, but this land is their domain. Enter a world where man is on the food chain, where monsters lurk in the shadows, where beasts roam. This is Cult Talk Conspiracy. Bigfoot Encounters.
Hello, all you believers, idealists, skeptics, and all those who question the universe around them. I'm Bailey.
And I'm Ty. And this is Cult Talks Conspiracy Bigfoot Encounters.
The Bigfoot. The big Bigfoot.
We're capping off April. We've talked about Bigfoot all month long. And we're going to do one of our Encounters episodes to wrap things up.
I'm so excited. Like, you and I have talked about Bigfoot quite a lot, like, in our spare time and in, like, normal conversation and whatnot. And, like, we remarked throughout this whole thing, like, how kind of bizarre it was to us to finally be talking about Bigfoot and Sasquatch within a year and a half of Cult Talks Conspiracy. But it kind of dawned on me that I had never, like, actually deep dived into an encounter with a Bigfoot, like actually went and like found the people and everything else. It was like stories that I had heard but never really like followed up on that. And I mean, these people go in depth. They're like, we want to know. So I mean, it's super cool to me to have all of these scientists and medical examiners and anthropologists and even a primateologist coming in to do all of that. So it's been really cool to me. I had to remark on how much science actually goes into this, because it was something that I knew but never had truly appreciated.
Well, yeah, and it's even interesting, too, to think about this year alone. I think every episode we've done, except for the Georgia Guidestones, has had Bigfoot referenced in it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's been weird.
The Outlaw Pass.
Yes.
Had a lot of Yeti stuff in it, both episodes.
Yep, our friend from the north.
Yep, both Georgia Guidestones not Georgia Guidestones, Iceberg episodes had Bigfoot references in them.
I think at least twice on both episodes.
Yeah, each one had at least one or two references to Bigfoot in it. And now we have a whole month. So it's crazy. It's been a very Bigfoot-centric year so far.
Which has been really cool. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There was a long absence of any Bigfoot stuff in our episodes. Now there's a plethora of it.
Do you think you're going to get a new Bigfoot tattoo this year?
Maybe some tattoos in general, but yeah, last episode we talked a lot about paranormal stuff with Bigfoot. You know, the various different spiritual aspects of it, and especially in the Northwest. And I actually watched a really cool documentary I just watched last night. I rented on Amazon because I frequently rent documentaries off Amazon. Usually I'm disappointed. I usually stick with Tubi, but there was one I found. It's called A Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, and it was fantastic. So if anyone really enjoyed that episode we did last episode talking about paranormal Bigfoot, definitely check out A Flash of Beauty. It was fantastic. It's one of the coolest documentaries I've seen in a long time. Just talking about the various spiritual and deeper impact that Bigfoot has on people. It's really interesting, really fun, just a beautiful documentary in general. A Flash of Beauty.
A Flash of Beauty.
So,
and that's on Amazon?
A Flash of Beauty.
Bigfoot documentary on Amazon.
It was like $3.99.
$3.99. Okay.
Yeah,
nice little. That'll be Ben and I's next date night is Bigfoot documentary.
Oh, it was great. I loved it. It was super cool. It's super intimate. I liked it a lot.
That's awesome. I love it when they explore like the spirit, like the spiritual and kind of like the paranormal sides of it as well. Because Ben and I actually just started watching. I'm gonna get the name wrong, but is it Harry and the Hendersons?
Yeah. Here
Oh,
it is.
nice. Oh, okay. I thought I was gonna get that wrong. Sweet. Okay. Yeah, we just started watching that like last night, and we were kind of commenting and discussing about like how people like get Bigfoot in its crosshairs and its sights, and like just cannot bring themselves to shoot it. So that whole phenomenon is very interesting to me as well.
Yeah, and they talk about that in the in Flash of Beauty
Sweet.
about how you kind of get like frozen or like
Yeah. It's like they're putting a spell on
it's
you.
interesting. Yeah, exactly. See, it's weird. I don't believe in paranormal stuff. Like I don't believe in ghosts.
Because
But
they're
I can
boring.
get behind like paranormal Bigfoot. That interests me.
How? No.
Some old lady like creeping around a house doesn't interest me at all. I just I can't buy into that. But I can buy into like Bigfoot having like a spiritual
Like a spiritual connection.
a spiritual element to it. Yeah, I can buy into that.
Okay.
But still, I don't believe in haunted houses and
I mean,
poltergeists. And
it all
stuff.
has to do with the land, my guy. It all has to do with the land. Like it
I can
depends.
buy into I could probably buy into a ghost Bigfoot, honestly, more than I could a haunted house.
He's an interdimensional being.
Yeah, I can buy into that, like interdimensional, ultra terrestrial kind of stuff.
Oh
But
yeah.
I just still can't, I can't buy into ghosts. But I can buy into paranormal Bigfoot.
I'm gonna get you one day. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna do what they did to me at the Mansfield Reformatory, and like side quest. So they have like a big dark room with like no windows or anything. It's like a complete concrete room, and it was where they would like hold the Freemason meetings and whatnot. And there's just like this wooden chair in the middle of the room. I actually have a picture of myself in that wooden chair, and the tour guide, one of the assistant tour guides, left me in the room alone and like shut off the lights for like 3 seconds. And like it was the scariest fucking thing in my entire life. I was so ready to get out of there because I sat in the chair and it was just like, okay, this is creepy. I'm ready to go now. I'm going to do that to you and just leave you in there for like an hour, and then we're going to see what happens.
See, I've done like back in my day. I used to go like splunking all the time. Like, I'd go and like like you know. I'm sure there's a statute of limitation. I'd go and like break into like abandoned buildings and stuff, and like, I mean, just creepy places I'd break into, and like we'd go exploring at night, and you know, I'd be with people and they'd be like terrified of ghosts. I was never once afraid of that. Like I never had a fear of like, oh, I'm going to get poltergeisted, or whatever. I never had that that fear, and you know, I've like handled human bones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's never. It's just like it's a piece of. It's same as handling like a chicken bone to me.
Oh man, that's actually pretty good for you because I do have like human remains all over the house and everything.
Yeah, I went to a place up in Cleveland, and the guy took me to the back and let me just like see like a human skeleton, and you know, he let me kind of like mess around with the skull and stuff like that.
That's cool.
He was like, you know, telling me the whole time. He's like, if you feel creeped out, if you're not comfortable, I was like, he's like,
I'm
to
cool.
me, it was same as just handling like a prop or something like that. But I was never once when I did like splunking, like worried of like getting a ghost. If I hear something, I don't immediately go to like it's a ghost. I think of like, oh, it's like a killer or like a monster. I don't. I like something tangible, or you know, I'm a very like, cause I don't believe in like afterlife. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. You know, I like things I can see.
Yeah. Just a very tangible believer. Really.
Yeah, exactly. A tangible belief. But yeah, I believe in like aliens and like, you know, ultra terrestrials and shit like that too. So
interesting.
See, I don't believe in spiritual stuff. I'm not a big spiritual person.
I have like completely blocked it out because like I'm just so scared of it being a killer, a monster, or a ghost that I'm like, it's got to be the house. It's just the house settling. It could be a new 2023 build, and I'll be like, it's the house settling. It's fine.
I'm more afraid of a mouse. Like, like mice scare the hell out of me. Like I would be. If I hear something like rattling around in a home, I'm like, oh my god, it's a fucking mouse.
There was a way
like,
back.
I'm not thinking like, oh my god, it's a, you know, a demonic spirit. It's like there's a fucking mouse in here.
Oh man, a few years ago, I did an open house, and there was a mouse that came out of the stove. It was a very old stove, and granted, we had a very old stove like that, and mice can't get up in it. And like all of a sudden, I look over, and there's just this little mouse just chilling on top of the stove, and I'm like, "Oh hey!" It was funny. I mean, I was just like, oh, okay, we might want to get that taken care of. Alrighty.
Anytime I've went to a showing, if there's mouse, if I find any like mouse or like poop
We're
or
done.
or any evidence,
Mhm.
I'm like I lose total interest in this place. I'm just terrified of mice.
Mhm.
That scares me more than anything. Is mice.
There's a negotiable. Just so you guys know, everything's negotiable. Like you can, everything is askable. Just so you know, like the worst they're gonna say is no.
Yeah. So I guess are you ready to go and cap off April and then talk about Bigfoot? And I'm excited to hear what kind of encounters we have here. So usually at these encounters episodes, we have a pretty nice little double feature.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited. I'm excited to get into this one because with mine at least, we are going to talk about something where we did actually discuss it in one of the icebergs, and I was like, it was so cool that I was like, this is the encounter that I'm doing in April.
Excellent. Yeah, the one I have is like I wanted to include it in part 2 of my Bigfoot stuff, like the Western Sasquatch stuff, but I just couldn't fit it in there, and I was like, hey, I kind of like to talk about this in its own little section, anyways, rather than lumping it in with everything else we was talking about in that episode. Because that episode was pretty beefy, so that was where this came from. Is I wanted to talk more about this one a little bit in depth. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think we're
Well,
a
sounds
pretty
like
good
we're
episode here. So
yeah.
Bailey, you go and kick us off. Let's hear what you got.
Cool beans. All right. So we are talking about the Minnesota Iceman today. That was the one in the iceberg where I gave like such minute detail because I was like, if I go into this one, I'm not gonna have an episode in April. So this occurred. This is so fucking crazy to me, by the way, guys. Like, first of all, we have no determined answers, just so we're all clear from the get-go. So this took place between 1965 and 1970. It happened around Minnesota and the surrounding Midwest. The person we're going to talk mainly about today is Frank Hansen. He was the curator, finder, and manager of the Iceman because he would be the one traveling, like taking and carting the Iceman around to various, fairs and like carnivals and even in some cases like shopping centers and whatnot.
Oh, wow.
So no one really knows the true origins of the Iceman, but what has been speculated and rumored is what we're going to talk about first, which is probably the most believable in my opinion, is it's possibly from Vietnam. It's unclear if the creature is an adolescent Bigfoot or a full-grown Sasquatch from a different country. And the reason it's kind of more believable for this to be from Vietnam is because Hansen was actually a fighter pilot during the Vietnam War, and he made claims of shooting the creature himself and bringing it back to the U.S. upon his deployment ending. Hansen also claimed the creature. I know. He also claimed that the creature was from Siberia, where he was a caretaker of, quote, an eccentric California millionaire whom he never named. Hansen toured the Iceman all over different carnivals, fairs, and even shopping centers. He was one time actually stopped by Canadian customs who had concerns about transporting cadavers. Which
interesting. So he was
going everywhere.
Wow.
He was going nuts. And which keep that little factoid in the back of your mind about concerns with transporting cadavers, because that comes back up later in Hansen's career with the Iceman. So what is the Iceman? What is this thing? Other than nobody really knows. So the Iceman was described as being male. He was also described as being 6 foot tall with large hands and feet, which also contained fingerprints, which was something that I had never really heard of it with other Bigfoot encounters, but honestly, I think it's because people haven't been able to get close enough to really see if there were fingerprints or foot pads or anything like that. The creature was hairy with very dark brown hair that was about 3 to 4 inches long. It had a flattened nose, and one of the arms appeared to be broken based on the position it was laying in. The right eyeball appeared to be missing, and the left eyeball was out of its socket, hanging on the side of the face. Both eyelids were closed, but the right eye did not appear to have a bulb, indicating the eyeball was still there. Supposedly, the right eyeball had been shot out, again,
Wow.
supposedly, possibly by Hansen, and with an exit wound on the back of the head. It's very interesting. We need to talk about the way that the Iceman was kind of kept really quick before we get into our encounter. So Frank Hansen froze the Iceman, hence the name Iceman. He was in like this coffin of ice, and parts of him would even be like outside of the ice, which was how we were able to see, like, it had fingerprints and everything because part of the fingers were outside. Hansen knew nothing about cryogenics, about freezing freezing bodies in general. So what he would do when the Iceman started to smell, or the ice started to, not become quite up to par and keeping the creature in this perfect state, is he would spray water on it. Now, this would actually
Probably
further.
not the best idea.
No,
Yeah, probably not
no.
the best idea.
It's not. And I don't know anything else about cryogenics either, but most of the time stuff like that is kept on dry ice because it's colder and it doesn't really.
Yeah, so when you get wet, I mean, you're on mildew and mold.
Right. And he was melting the ice when he was spraying that ice on top of the icebox. He was just further melting the ice. So it's amazing it lasted for as many years as it did in that condition. But ultimately, it would start to decay, and there was just nothing that, anyone could really do. And it was at Frank Hansen's own detriment and his own consequence because he just didn't understand cryogenics. So now we get into our account by Terry Cullen. And he saw the Iceman in 1967. Terry Cullen is originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And may I just say, Wisconsin, I don't know what y'all got in your water, but like everything weird comes from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I love y'all. Y'all keep doing what you're doing. But like, I'm just saying, y'all might want to get that shit tested. So he was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So he would see the Iceman in its heyday of 1967. So I call it its heyday because the Iceman started touring around 1965, 1966. So this was pretty early in the times where, he was going on his American tour and Canadian tour, apparently. So he actually met Frank Hansen personally, along with Frank Hansen's wife. Terry's background is he's admittedly not a Sasquatch researcher. He is not someone that is, in that field of cryptozoology. He actually has a background and a career in veterinary medicine. So, of course, with this thing being like, a supposed animal, he took very, very keen interest in the Iceman. So he was actually originally attracted to the exhibit by the blue and chrome booth that had Frozen Caveman exhibit written over top of it. And what was interesting...
So this thing was like sold, like he just like found this thing?
Yeah, we have no idea. I have no idea if he froze it himself, if he found it frozen, if it was sold to him, if it was willed to him by the eccentric millionaire. No frickin' clue. But Frank Hansen was extremely aloof, and he just would not share details about this thing, like at all, which Terry Cullen found out. So when Terry Cullen saw the creature, he immediately could not tell if it was real or fake. Cullen actually admittedly said that it was the best fake he'd ever seen, if it truly was a fake. Now, Hansen was extremely paranoid, and he was actually extremely possessive over the creature. And a lot of people had speculations about why didn't he sell the creature? Why didn't he, move it to science or anything like that? It's like, and Terry Cullen honestly said it best in this interview, or presentation, I should say, when he said, if he had sold the Iceman, he would have had $1 million, and that's great. If he kept the Iceman and kept it on tour, he would have had $1 million a year. So that ultimately proves the motivation there for me.
Makes sense, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hansen would not allow anyone, including Cullen, to take photos, have any tests done, have any measurements of the creature done, any hair samples taken, or any sort of closer looks that would not be seen from the murky ice, because the ice was actually not very clear. It was kind of blurry. which I don't know if you get that with dry ice or not. I don't know if you can see like clearly through it
Maybe
or
a little
whatnot.
cloudiness. I mean, it
Yeah.
happens too, like with like ice and your freezer or something like that. Or
Yeah. And
like
what
the
I
air
found really
bubbles and things like that.
what I found really interesting about this one was they noted that the nose was flat, but there was nothing remarkable about the forehead. And then typically, like with sort of normal Sasquatch or Bigfoot encounters, like they do say like it has a really big head, like really
Right.
abnormally shaped head. So I found that quite interesting that there was nothing notable there. And I wonder if it's because they couldn't see it.
It could be. Maybe no one was able to actually get enough of a look at it to note anything remarkable about it.
Right. So as we talked about earlier, Frank Hansen knew nothing about cryogenics. So the thing would start to decay and it would start to smell, and there would even be future complaints from patrons regarding the smell of decay and death. So many anthropologists were actually called on by Terry Cullen to get definite answers if this creature was real or fake. Most college professors would not even entertain the idea of even looking at this thing. So now
Wow.
right, because they're worried about their reputation and even
Yeah. I've seen that before. Like, I've heard that before in like Bigfoot stuff, where like people will find hair samples or some sort of like theorized DNA evidence, and they'll send it off to like a researcher, and they'll just like return to sender it. Like,
oh yeah, no, I ain't dealing with this.
and there's also like that falls into like some conspiracy talk, because there are like people who theorize that that's kind of like a thing within academics where there's a higher group of people who know these things exist, and they're covered up, so it's like you don't get yourself involved with the Sasquatch thing.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, here is where things get interesting. And unfortunately it's the beginning of the end for our Iceman tale. Enter John Napier, who is a primateologist. He was called on by an individual named Sanderson through the Argosy magazine when the creature was brought to the attention of the magazine. They would run the story headlined, "Is this missing link between man and apes?" And basically what they were trying to prove is like, was the Iceman a primate of some sort? Did it have any sort of primate origins? And this is just a case of mistaken identity, which a lot of the time we do find that with Bigfoot is, is it a primate? So he was called on by the magazine. Napier actually had ties to our wonderful friends at the Smithsonian and wished to investigate the creature under the Smithsonian, making comparisons to different other primates that had been made, different historical references and whatnot. And basically, this would take away custody of the Iceman from Frank Hansen and put it directly with the Smithsonian.
Wow.
As soon as this started happening, the Minnesota Iceman was removed from public viewing. So threats and eyes from the FBI when laws about bringing bodies into different countries, from different countries into the U.S. started to arise, this really made Frank Hansen nervous, because this would mean the creature would have to be proven as a fake or be proven as authentic. Regardless, the result of this was the creature being removed from Hansen's custody. So after about 9 years...
That's like the biggest thing like he didn't want to happen.
Right. He is like, absolutely not. Like, no one can take this thing from me. So after about 9 years, the Iceman rose again, being put on display in a shopping center where our great friend Terry Cullen would see it. As soon as Hansen saw Terry Cullen, he made it very clear that he was not welcome in the exhibit, and actually, from Terry's account, threw a bunch of curses at him and was like, "You're not here."
Jeez.
Terry Cullen described Frank Hansen as being extremely paranoid and a pathological liar, which is very interesting. And I can't really disagree with him. Number one, because I never met Frank Hansen. Number two, because like the stories you're hearing about him are fucking sketch. Like, it's like, I can't get a clear answer out of you, my guy.
Yeah, he does sound a little Connie.
Right.
He does sound
right.
a little
right.
Carney-ish.
Oh, yeah. So when Terry saw the creature those 9 years later, it would smell, and it was actually showing like clear signs of decay, and patrons were even complaining. Terry Cullen called many different surrounding universities and anthropologists to come and take a look at the Iceman for authenticity. Only one would answer, and admittedly, Colin cannot recall the name of this anthropologist's name, but he says he was a younger guy, came out, wanted to see it, had major interest in it. He would go in and see the creature absent Cullen because, Frank Hansen made it clear that he did not want him in there. So he didn't want the anthropologist thrown out if he knew that he was with Terry Cullen.
Right.
So the anthropologist goes in there and he comes out and Terry Cullen is like, "What'd you think?" And he just kind of laughs and shakes his head and he just goes, "That's really something." And Terry's like, "Is it real? Do you think it's real?" And according to Terry, he just shook his head and laughed and then walked away, but would never answer if he thought the creature was actually real or not.
Jeez.
Since that time, the Minnesota Iceman has not been put on display, and no one knows where the Iceman is to this day, and no one knows if it is actually a real Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or just strange Vietnam primate. So that is your big mystery around the Minnesota Iceman.
It's interesting we find these stories when you start digging into cryptids of like these cryptids on display.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know we talked about this back in the Jersey Devil episode. There was someone who had like a Jersey Devil they toted around.
Yeah.
There's the Minnesota Iceman. You can go back to what was that mermaid?
Oh, shucks.
There was that
thing.
Yeah. That was packed around. The jackalope that's kind of like part of the jackalope lore.
I love a good jackalope.
Yeah,
I love them.
Great. Yeah, there's interesting. You find these like cryptids that are supposedly like in captivity, dead, of course.
Oh yeah.
But that are like put on display and carried around, especially like back during like the mid-century. It's wild. There was so many of these around. But it does like beg the question: were these like actually like real things that are now just covered up, like locked away somewhere in the Smithsonian vault with the giants?
Oh yeah. I was just thinking about my phone call with the Smithsonian this morning with the giants. I was just thinking about that one. Maybe I can call him back and be like, "Do you have the Minnesota Iceman? I'm the crazy girl from the Giants. Remember me?" Like, but I mean I'm
sure they get so many damn calls on the giant thing. They probably don't remember.
Probably not. They're probably like, "Oh, okay."
Another one. Yeah.
Another one. This one, it was just so interesting to me because, like, we have no answers. We have no answers on what it is, where it came from. Should we even be talking about this thing? Is it even relevant to, the Bigfoot, I guess, society, finders, cryptozoologist? But it's like, there is relevance there because, like, we truly don't know. If we ever find that, oh my freaking God. Oh my God. Can you imagine the just amazing amounts of tests that are going to take place on that thing?
Well, I mean, I always wonder, like, is there anything even left of it? Because it doesn't sound like it was maintained at all. So you got to wonder, like, even if it was uncovered, like, what would there even be left of it?
The bones. Probably just the teeth.
Bones, yeah, bones. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those will last. But yeah, I mean, imagine like its fur's probably rotted away, all the flesh is probably gone. I mean,
yeah, all the innards, the squishy innards.
Yeah, everything's got to be rotted away by now.
Yeah, you'd only have teeth and bones at that point, I think. I don't know.
Right.
What you got?
So this is actually something I want to talk about. Like in the last episode, I mentioned, this is one of the most interesting like Sasquatch like pieces of lore that I've ever came across, and it's one of those things where it's like it's almost shocking to me there isn't like a movie made about it. Which I can say that about Ape Canyon. I always am surprised there's not like an Ape Canyon movie out. And this right here as well. We're gonna be talking about Portlock, Alaska.
Oh, fabulous.
Portlock, Alaska. It's kind of an infamous piece of Sasquatch lore, especially when you're talking about like American Sasquatch lore. I mean, it's pretty well like up there as far as that goes. So we're going to talk about that. So an isolated peninsula known as Kenai was landed in 1785 by Captain Nathaniel Portlock while surveying remote Alaska. Portlock and his crew were astounded that the area appeared to not yet be settled. They found a healthy population of game and fish, but also evidence that they weren't the first settlers on the land. A native village was found along the shore long abandoned and appearing as though it was done so hastily. Now, not long after this, Portlock's crew began to fall ill and become overwhelmed with a sense of fear. Of what, they had no idea. They just had this like dread about them. Something wasn't right about this area.
Ugh.
At the same time, they hadn't known that 6 years prior, a group of Spanish explorers actually settled on the peninsula as well. And they would actually experience something similar. They would become sick, kind of crazed with fear, and some of them would actually even die before the Spanish explorers would finally decide to abandon the area. Now, the crew, they begged Portlock to leave. They feared the land was maybe under some sort of tribal curse, and that's what they were feeling. But the captain was not willing to leave what he saw as prime land. That is, until night fell, and the forest would erupt with horrific roars and cries that grew ever so closer to their camp. Portlock, he decided it was time, so he and his crew gathered what they had, and they left. And from that point on, the peninsula would take on his name. It would be known as Portlock.
Huh.
Now, something to discuss here. We're talking about them being sick, and we're going to kind of call back to file 35 and 37, your Dyatlov Pass episodes.
Oh.
Where we talked about that infrasound.
Oh.
So there's a theory that maybe what Portlock's crew and the Spanish explorers before them were actually suffering from maybe exposure to infrasound. We talk about maybe these creatures having that capability. And even going back to our last episode, we talked about how people will kind of get like this sense that Sasquatch is there. They'll get like an unease when these creatures are around them. So it kind of does like beg the question of like, do these things have some sort of this supernatural ability
to
kind of get into our heads or affect our bodies and minds in some way? It's just a really interesting like contrast there.
Yeah, I go back to the power within the land, because like this is when everyone understands how pagan I am. Like, I just go back to it because they're living off the land. They're literally doing everything off of the land. So like they would have such a deeper connection than what we do as people and as even humans. That could they possess such a power given to them by the land and by kind of becoming one with that spirit, that is just what they are now. It's quite interesting. It's a very interesting phenomenon. I'm excited. This makes me excited.
So 100 years later, so this land would be pretty much, at least notably, undiscovered or unsettled on for at least 100 years. The Shug Peak, which are a tribe of nomads, they would settle on the peninsula. And much like the explorers before them, they were just amazed by the size and abundance of natural resources, just healthy amounts of game and fish. In particular, they were interested in the clams. They found these giant clams that were all over the shore. And the nomads believed that they could survive through many a harsh winter in this area based on the bounty of clams that they were just finding.
Nice.
But much like with Captain Portlock, night brought terror, as they would find themselves under attack by savage, hairy men that they would call the Nantink. These beasts showed no mercy. They were relentless in their assaults on the nomad. The nomads, however, they refused to give up their new home. And this conflict between the nomads and the savage, hairy men would rage on not for days, not for weeks or months, or even years, but decades. From 1867 to 1905, the hairy men tore the nomads to shreds.
That's
Anytime
insane.
they would need a meal, if game became scarce, if they're as winter would come on and the deer would move on, the hairy men would resort to just invading the nomad camps and just tearing them apart.
Oh man. First of all, the fact that they lasted that long. Second of
38
all,
years.
you're
38 years.
you're basically dealing with a bully at that point. Like you're dealing with someone who's bigger than you, more vicious than you. Just give them what they want. Like you're
Right.
a
That's
nope.
what I mean. Like after the first like couple like weeks of that, I would be like, all right, this is obviously not worth it. We'll go find somewhere else.
Yeah,
I
no.
mean, they were nomads. They were constantly moving from place to place.
At
I don't know why they
38
decided like
years.
let's go ahead and let's settle here for 38 years.
Yeah, where we're being attacked and that's
People are
strange.
being slaughtered. Yeah.
That's strange. I wonder, this is like a theory coming out of my ass right now. Is like I wonder if like the Sasquatch, because we've already talked about how like they, could have like some sort of supernatural power where they can, kind of get into our head.
Mhm.
I wonder if like something about that like made them stay as like a food source.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a good explanation because I mean, I just can't comprehend why they would stay there.
I can't
for so
either.
long
That's why I'm like something
when
had
they're
to
literally being ripped to shreds on a nightly basis. It sounds like.
like. I mean. And I mean, it's Portlock, Alaska, guys. Like, are the clams this good? Like, what is happening? Get a cart. Let's take them to go. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know. That's crazy to me. I don't know.
But it's interesting you're talking about like the land and things like that because Portlock, it's almost like it's some kind of mythical cursed land that just couldn't stay abandoned for long because it would once again attract new settlers in 1921. So, just over 15 years later, more people would find Portlock and decide this is a place we need to set up shop. The Russian Aleut found themselves drawn to the rich salmon population that would inhabit the waters around Portlock.
Mm-hmm.
And they were industrious people. They decided to build a cannery. So they built this like little factory on the land where they would actually process local salmon. They built an entire community, including shops, school, and even a post office. So they communicate with the outside world. And they also heard of the legends of the hairy wild men. So they incorporated several strict rules into their community guidelines. No one was to be out past sundown. No one was to ever enter the forest.
Uh-huh.
And no one was to go outside when there was fog. Now, in addition to these rules, armed guards would patrol the streets at all times. They would particularly focus on protecting the school and the cannery, which was like the main point of the whole community being there.
Were they canning salmon?
Yeah, they were canning salmon. Yeah,
interesting.
They were pulling salmon and canning it, processing it.
So they're protecting their young and their food source.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I mean that's how they made money too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean they were selling
income stream. You're right. Yeah.
Canned salmon. Yeah. Now these rules actually allowed the community to grow and prosper for several years. And as we see a lot, just in everyday life, once you've kind of gone along, you become kind of complacent.
Mm-hmm.
And the community became complacent. After several years of no incidents, they started to kind of be a little more lax on the rules. People would enter the forest more. People weren't, immediately shuttering their doors when night fell.
Ooh, y'all testing.
Yeah,
Ooh, y'all
they
testing boundaries. I
they
don't like
let their
this.
guard down.
I don't like this.
Now, in 1931, Andrew Comlock loaded his sled dogs with equipment and entered the forest to log some trees. But he would never return. The townspeople gathered together and entered the woods to locate him, and they found his dogs ripped to shreds, and Andrew with his head bashed in by the very equipment he had dragged into the forest.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean these hairy men were pretty I feel like they were pretty well sending a message.
Yeah. Stop it.
Exactly. This was the beginning of the end for the Altuk people and their time in Portlock. Soon gold miners, hunters, and livestock began to vanish. Bodies began to wash ashore, mutilated, covered in claw and bite marks, just beyond any recognition. Each missing person was closer and closer to the community, as if something was closing in on it. One night, a thick fog settled into Portlock. As they did, everyone, took to their homes, shuttered in.
Mm-hmm.
But the cannery was broken into. And it was damaged so bad that it actually burnt to the ground.
Oh my. Oh shit. Well, now we're leaving.
Yeah. So finally in 1950, they abandoned the peninsula. They would actually be the last people to attempt to settle on the land. Portlock, it remains abandoned in the remote Alaskan wilderness, but there are still stories that come from whenever hunters do stumble on the area.
Mm-hmm.
Reports of people being stalked and hunted are common from the area, and most seasoned hunters actually avoid it despite there being a very healthy population of wildlife. And that's kind of the interesting thing about Portlock, is it's like this little like oasis. I mean, there's rich populations of wildlife all through Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
But this land in particular is noted as being just abundant in wildlife and fish, and just almost like the perfect place to settle.
You know what that reminds me of?
What's
Headless Valley.
that? Oh yeah,
The Headless Valley. I think that's out in like Washington State.
I think so. Yeah,
I don't know, guys.
and that actually has there's actually a pretty rich like Sasquatch lore around that as well.
Right? Yeah, it's growing so many parallels, and like Portlock is such a place of high strangeness. Like it's just like that could be like its own series. And Lord knows David Paulides has had his fair share of just so many stories coming out of Portlock, Alaska. I mean, oh man, that's fucking insane.
Yeah, and people, there's all kinds of stories of hunters who will stumble upon Portlock, and they'll camp out for the night, and they'll won't get any rest. They'll hear things moving just out of line of sight.
Nope.
They'll have things thrown at them. They'll have the feeling being watched, and almost like they're being hunted.
Nope.
People go missing. It's reported that the Russian canning community that was built there, it officially 15 to 16 people went missing. Officially.
Oh, shikes.
Yes, but the people of the community actually claim it was much higher. Double, triple that amount.
Yeah.
Actually went missing.
I mean, yeah. First of all, it's Russia. It's Russia.
Well, it's Alaska.
Right, but it was a Russian community.
Yeah.
I'm over here like, there's fine print, Ty. No, but like, so here's the thing. I would absolutely go to Dyatlov Pass. I would absolutely do it. Just to fucking see it and have the experience. I will in no way, shape, or form ever, and I do mean fucking ever, go to Portlock, Alaska. Absolutely not. I will not do it. Yeah, I will absolutely hike my ass for 3 weeks all the way up a Russian mountain to possibly get eaten by a Yeti, but I will not step foot on Portlock, Alaska. That shit is crazy. That's insane.
It's crazy, like the amount of people who are like the constantly people are just like drawn to it.
It's crazy. I like that it was two different things that kind of attracted two different communities of people to it. Because the first one was the clams, the second one was the salmon, and it was so abundant that they could make a profit off of it. It's also really interesting that the cannery was the only thing that was attacked and the only thing that was like truly damaged. Was there any reports of like people going missing during that night or anything? Do you know?
Not during that night. It seemed like everyone was pretty much bedded in.
It's interesting.
And then it broke in, and whatever it did, there was so much damage that the cannery just caught fire.
That's interesting.
Now there is like one remaining cabin in Portlock. And it's like around the edge of the forest. You can see it if you look at pictures of Portlock. It's usually just a picture of that cabin. It is like the last remaining like remnant of the communities there. There is a show on Discovery. I don't know if it's a show or a documentary. Maybe it's a single one, but it's called Alaskan Killer Bigfoot.
Ooh.
That's out on Discovery. There's like it's been featured in several shows like Missing in Alaska. Monsters and Mysteries of America, things like that. So it's become like a pretty popular legend in Alaska and the cryptozoology community, because it's like a Bigfoot actually like ran an entire town out. Like it turned a town into a ghost town.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I had to look at the photo of it real quick, and of course, like the first thing that because I'm a realtor, the first thing that pops up is Portlock, Alaska cabins for sale. And I'm like, nope, no. Yeah, there's one with 38 homes attached to. I bet there is. Like,
Nice.
oh my God, not in Portlock, like adjacent to it. But like, oh gee whiz, the fact that we have an abundant piece of land that is just absolutely just, I mean, it's inhabitable for a short period of time, but it's just run two completely separate communities out. That's crazy.
That's what I found was interesting. Like since the 1950s, it's been abandoned. For the most part, aside from some here and there settlers, but it blows my mind. It's today with the amount of technology and stuff we have that no one's just been like, just went there and built a factory or something.
Right, especially in like the day and age that we're in now, where it's like so many people and so many corporations are buying up land that
like nothing's sacred anymore. Yeah,
right. So it's like
wild to me.
So I'll be interested to see if anyone does buy property out in Portlock, Alaska, and exactly who it is. Maybe we'll have another Skinwalker Ranch phenomenon going on in Portlock, where it suddenly becomes government owned and no one can go there.
Well, it's interesting too that these the Russian community that came in, like they were fully aware of the legend that kind of surrounded the area, and they took it seriously. Like they weren't just like what the fuck ever.
Right, because they had guards
to, like implement rules. Yeah, they implemented rules, and the armed guards, like they were like well aware that this area was dangerous. And of course, you can kind of contribute that to bears and things of that. I mean, obviously it's Alaska. It's one of the most dangerous places on the planet. So I mean, it is. It's maybe a lot of that could be contributed to bears.
But a bear's not going to smash a skull in and then leave the body. A bear's going to eat that. You're not going to find that body.
Exactly. Like, that is like what happened to Andrew was pretty, like, to me seems like a warning. It killed the dogs. It took the equipment that they carried in and like bashed his head in with it.
Right. Yeah.
Like that takes some thought.
Yeah, that takes conscious thinking. So yeah, that's crazy. That's insane. I will never step foot over there. Like absolutely not. That's insane. That's cool. That's a really cool time. I love that. I would love to come back and like just occasionally revisit Portlock, Alaska, because there's so many like high strange occurrences that have happened over there.
It'd be interesting too to talk about like the Headless Valley and things like that eventually. That was kind of the beauty of this whole like April thing we did. I mean, we kind of touched on things kind of like in a similar fashion we did with the iceberg, where it was kind of jumping around. So I mean, there's possibilities of revisiting any number of these things. Like I said, we didn't even touch on the Headless Valley in the last episode.
That one's crazy.
That's something that took out west. I mean, there's stuff like that there's infinite amount of Bigfoot reports. That there's just so many possibilities to go back and visit things.
Oh man, absolutely. This was such a fun month. Like honestly, like this is just so cool to go in and like, basically do our road trip. That's what I'm calling it, is our road trip of Bigfoots all throughout the US, and then visit these encounters.
I'm really surprised that I thought for sure like one of us would get like Albert Ostman. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I haven't. Who is that?
So Albert Ostman, I'll get the little bonus. I didn't research this at all, but I know enough about this to kind of talk about for a second, because I remember this being like one of the first Bigfoot things I read about. I was in elementary, like I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, because I had this book that I would rent that I would get from our library all the time. That was just like a book of like Bigfoot and things like that. It was just like a cryptid book for kids. And there was this prospector. His name was Albert Ostman. And he claimed that in 1924, 24, I think, in British Columbia and Canada, he was actually kidnapped by Bigfoot.
Oh, okay.
While he was, he'd been camping there, and over the course of a few days, he was kind of becoming aware that there was something stalking him. There was this creature that was in the woods, just out of line of sight, that was stalking him. It was coming into his camp at night. So he decides one night he's going to, as he's growing fearful, he's like, he keeps his rifle in his bag. He puts stuff in his bag with him. And he goes to sleep, and he wakes up in the middle of the night being carried off by this Sasquatch.
Oh, God. And
the Sasquatch takes him, carries him for hours over his shoulder, and eventually brings him to its home, I guess, for lack of a better word, where there are a couple other Bigfoot. I think there was a couple child Bigfoot and a couple adults.
Does Bigfoot have a nuclear family?
That's what it sounds like. It's like a nuclear family. Like even the way he describes it, if I remember right, it's like the dad, the mom, the kids, and an elder.
Oh my gosh!
Was like the structure that he had kind of picked up on. See, they kept him there for 6 days.
Oh, shit.
A week he lived there, and they would kind of feed him. They would feed him, and he remember he was calling it a sweet grass is what they would kind of give him. It was some sort of plant they would feed him, and he began to form this little bit of a bond with them, where they weren't mean or they weren't aggressive toward him. They just didn't want him to leave. He had really no idea why he was being kept there, kind of like a pet.
That's what I was just thinking.
I'm being honest. They were kind of keeping him like a pet.
He was like, Junior, look what I found for you.
Yeah. And he talks about the female, they even had kind of a structure. The female would clean and stuff, the area. They would go out and they would bring back leaves and wash them and just stuff like that. It was really interesting. He was basically like you said, painting it like a nuclear family.
It's really interesting.
Type situation. And he eventually did escape. He had snuff that he had kept in his bag, and he used that to kind of distract the male long enough for him to get away.
Oh, so that Bigfoot likes the wacky tobacco.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
He escaped, and he didn't tell anyone for I think it was 20 years after.
I don't blame him.
When he finally did tell about it, it was it happened so long ago. But yeah, it's interesting. It's this weird little Bigfoot story. It's very fantastical. There's no other report like it. I mean, that I know of. That's
wicked. That's wicked in the coolest ways, but that's also absolutely freaking terrifying. I got at a loss for words for that one because that's just insane. I feel like that's one that we could definitely do a deeper look into.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think of what, because I've heard there's stories, and it comes into play a lot with the missing 411 stuff too, where Bigfoot is taking people.
Yeah. Well, those
people are never heard from again, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there was one story that comes to mind as a little girl who was seen again, thankfully. But she was swimming out at a lake or something, and she says this big creature carried her off, and she was found 10 miles, I think, the way the crow flies away. And she was
right. There are several kids ones where they talk about being protected by a bear and stuff like that.
Yeah, and she was found in a cave, if I'm remembering correctly, high up off the ground, and she actually one of the rescuers were calling her name, and she went, "Here I am," and she's up on this cave cliff, and it's how the fuck did you get up there? First of all, how did you survive? And she talked about this big. I'll have to find that story again because that one took me by very big surprise because I think she was only between the ages of 4 and 6. She was not, barefoot through the woods, 10 miles as the crow flies.
That the missing 401 thing is another thing that we've touched on many a times. We haven't done a deep dive in, so maybe here later this year we'll be talking more about missing 401.
Absolutely.
But this is a good way to cap off April, this big Bigfoot month we decided to do randomly here at the beginning of the year. and it's been a lot of fun. And there's a lot of things I know I missed a lot. When I even going over as I was writing, there was like certain things that kind of pained me to have to like look past.
But that doesn't mean we can't revisit those.
Exactly. That's the beauty of it, is there's definitely an opportunity to go back and talk about more of these weird legends, because there are.
Absolutely.
Every state has some sort of Bigfoot type legend, and we touched on just barely scratched the surface. I think we covered altogether like 10 states, I think.
Oh yeah, it was a lot. It was
10 or 11. So
it's cool.
There's still so many left that we could talk about. But we're continuing on after this. We're going to be talking about aliens and UFOs and stuff again. We haven't talked about even that. I mean, we haven't talked about UFOs in a minute. Next month, kind of oddly, could be considered a themed month, I would say, because you're doing crop circles, right?
Yep, crop circles and mounds, which, I mean, if you live in Ohio or you've done mound research, there's all kinds of stuff all over Ohio. Even in our hometown in Chillicothe, like I think I counted up like 5 different mounds that we have that nobody is allowed to step foot on. Like they have it completely fenced off and like you're not allowed to go near it. And it's like, what's under there? So we're going to look into that.
And then I'm going to be talking about later in the month. So that's file 042. But he's going to be doing about crop circles and mounds. And that comes out here in a couple weeks. Then I'm going to be doing the Phoenix Lights is what I plan to do.
That's cool.
For May. So we're doing like a little UFO alien month thing. And that's all a precursor right to our big summer event that we do. So it's a stacked, pretty stacking. We stacked this year pretty well.
Oh, absolutely.
I think with what we've got, we're not even halfway through it.
No, and I mean, I'm just, oh man, this is exciting. I love all
to see if Bigfoot rears his head again. Anything?
I don't know. He probably will.
Pretty prevalent this year. I don't think he's involved with the Phoenix Lights at all, but you never know. He might pop up again.
I feel like he's gonna pop up in mounds. Well, to be seen.
I was thinking that. I was like, I could see that. It is, Native Americans do have a pretty rich legacy of Bigfoot lore, so it's interesting. That could be in there, I imagine.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see if it fits in. But that does it for us, Bailey. This is April to a close, talking about Bigfoot. What a way to do it. A whole month dedicated to my favorite cryptid, America's cryptid.
Yes.
That does it for us.
I think so.
Make sure you guys follow us at Cult Talk Net across the board. That's Instagram, X, YouTube, Facebook, all the things. Bailey and I are here every other Tuesday to talk about everything from conspiracies, the unknown stuff, to cryptids, everything. We talk about all kinds of stuff. There's really no rhyme or reason how we do things. Sometimes it's weird that we've done like so many themed things this year, when considering it's like one episode we're talking about UFOs, and the next episode we're talking about The Simpsons.
Yeah,
so it's very odd.
Listen, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. You go on to Reddit, there's at least 5 different topics on the front page. That's exactly how we are. It's fine. Listen,
it's a magazine show. It's like every episode's a different article.
Right, exactly.
But you guys can catch Cult of Campbell, which we just did virtual Bruce Fest last month.
Woohoo! The king, baby.
Cult of Campbell comes out on Mondays here and there. It's kind of a little passion project. It's pretty loose right now with when it comes out.
Although we do have a new, I don't know if you saw this yet or not, the new Evil Dead. Is that coming out?
New Evil Dead in the working. So
is that later this year or next year? Do we know yet?
I don't know. I think it's still early production.
Okay.
I think it just got announced. So I don't. It might be maybe getting ready to go in production, possibly.
Dude.
But I doubt it'll be out this year. But
Cult of Campbell is a deadite in itself.
Oh, it never dies. Cult of Lore every first and third Thursday of the month. That's Ben, Eric, and Jerry talking about Warhammer and just all sorts of world building and lore stuff. And you guys got to check out youtube.com/culttalknet for the full video experience for that, because they work really hard on putting that together. And summer's coming up. You never know what we have. We do holiday specials, all the sorts. Check out Culttober Plus for all that. Just a huge year we have in store. A lot of new things, a lot of things that we haven't done ever. So a lot of cool stuff. Make sure you guys check out Cult Talk Net to keep up on all of that. But until next time, I've been Ty.
And I've been Bailey.
Question
everything.